Air Force had an official investigation program looking into the phenomenon for over 20 years, starting in 1948. They continued until its termination in 1969. What many might not be aware of is that England also had an early official interest in the subject, and the Ministry of Defense put together an investigation team in 1950 called the Flying Saucer Working Party. It lasted less than a year and was disbanded after the group issued a report recommending against further investigation. Continued sighting reports and interest among influential people caused the MOD to reconsider, and in 1952, 2 divisions of the Air Ministry were tasked with investigating. The story of the MOD's first involvement with mysterious aerial phenomena is told in the study guide titled Unidentified Flying Objects on the National Archives UK website. Besides providing a jumping-off point for researchers, the guide provides links that were broken at the time of this writing to many pertinent records. After defining what a UFO is, it begins with a history of official interest that starts in 1909. This was the year of the British airship, or Scareship, mystery that involved reports of Zeppelin-like craft similar to those reported in the U.S. during a wave there that occurred around 1896. After that, the guide gets into the mystery lights, reported by Allied and Axis pilots over wartime Britain in the 1940s that were known to the USAF as Foo Fighters and termed night phenomena in British Air Ministry records, as well as the ghost rockets reported over Scandinavia. According to the guide, over 3 years after flying saucers were all over the news in the U.S., 2 major papers in the UK, the Sunday Dispatch and the Sunday Express, started carrying articles covering the phenomenon. The Express serialized Gerald Heard's 1950 book, The Riddle of Flying Saucers, the first saucer book published in the UK, and the Dispatch carried excerpts from Donald Keogh's 1950 book, The Flying Saucers Are Real, and Frank Scully's 1950 book, Behind the Flying Saucers, which were the first and second saucer books respectively published in the U.S. It was this coverage that is said to have led some influential people, including Earl Mountbatten and the retired Commander-in-Chief of Fighter Command, Air Chief Marshal Sir Hugh Dowding, to press the government for action. The action that was taken was at the behest of Sir Henry Tizard, who was Chief Scientific Advisor at the MOD. In 1950, Tizard requested that a small working party should be established in the Directorate of Scientific Intelligence / Joint Technical Intelligence Committee to investigate the phenomenon. This was dubbed the Flying Saucer Working Party. According to the guide, the FSWP was unknown to all but a very few, but an indication of its existence was discovered when a file containing correspondence between Winston Churchill and the Air Ministry was opened at TNA Ref PREM 11/855. A response dated 9 August 1952 to Churchill's inquiry regarding the truth about flying saucers contains the information that they were the subject of full intelligence study in 1951. According to the guide, the FSWP's existence was revealed when minutes of the DSI/JTIC were released under reference EEFE 41/152. It's described this way. The working party included 5 intelligence officers from the 3 services and was headed by one of the MOD's scientific intelligence branches. All the members were specialists in the field of scientific and technical intelligence. The single remaining copy held in the archives of the FSWP's final report, designated DSI/JTIC Report Number 7, is the only report found that had been produced by the group. It was found after a request made by Dr. David Clark under the Code of Practice for access to government information. Another researcher historical is covered in the first two sections, with the first one describing the ghost rockets, and the second covering the 1947 report by Kenneth Arnold in the U.S. It is said he reported a saucer-like disk when he actually reported 9 crescent-shaped objects and the publicity that followed. The third section states that no objective evidence have been submitted, making it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to arrive at anything like scientific proof of the nature of the phenomena. Following this are sections 4 through 9, reviewing the findings of the USAF investigation operating as Project Grudge, which include a description of the 1948 Thomas Mantell incident and the conclusion that he died chasing the planet Venus. It is just after this that the team is said to have been informed in conversation with a member of the United States investigating team that the even more sensational report of the discovery of a crashed flying saucer full of the remains of very small beings was ultimately admitted by its author to have been a complete fabrication. This is almost certainly referring to Frank Scully and the story he told in his book. The next section of the report is headed Investigation of Incidents in the United Kingdom. The publicity given to the subject by the British press in 1950 is brought up. Some reports from that year are described, and they are explained as undoubtedly a meteorite in one instance, an optical illusion in another, and misidentification is the likely cause of many reports. Under conclusions and recommendations, the authors bring up William Baucham's principle that the most probable hypothesis is the simplest necessary to explain the observations, and conclude that all the reports were the result of the following. 1. Astronomical or meteorological phenomena of known types. 2. Mistaken identification of conventional aircraft, balloons, birds, or other normal or natural objects. 3. Optical illusions and psychological delusions. 4. Deliberate hoaxes.
unidentified flying objects, is a must-read for anyone interested in the subject. Captain Ruppelt was the first director of Project Blue Book after leading a massive reorganization effort to revitalize the investigation while it was still operating its Project Grudge. He was the person who came up with the designation Unidentified Flying Object, or UFO, which was pronounced UFO, for what were popularly known as flying saucers. His book recounts his time with the project under both names and provides an insider's view of what were then classified activities. There are two editions of the book with two different endings. The second edition was published in 1960, and Ruppelt included recent cases as a means to update the book. This edition has 3 more chapters tacked on that have a decidedly more negative tone than the original preceding chapters, where Ruppelt displays an open-minded view. This has led some to wonder if Ruppelt was pressured by the Air Force, which was then following the Robertson panel's recommendation to downplay UFO reports. A truly remarkable aspect of Ruppelt's book is that it can be checked against declassified documents. During his time with the Grudge and Blue Book, Ruppelt wrote a series of 12 status reports. They consist of descriptions of the efforts made to make the investigation more efficient and scientific, along with lists and summations of significant cases. The Ruppelt in the status reports is the same Ruppelt in the book, though understandably more formal. One gets a sense of healthy skepticism along with an openness to be convinced that UFOs are interplanetary given enough good scientific evidence. Ruppelt came up against some truly baffling and intriguing cases, but the one that likely had the most impact on him was one he called the Washington Merry-Go-Round. Over 2 weekends in July of 1952, in the midst of a flap that overwhelmed the Blue Book staff, there were a series of radar returns and visual sightings of UFOs over restricted airspace in Washington, D.C. Their behavior was quite mysterious, but even so, Ruppelt wasn't convinced of their interplanetary nature. Ruppelt ends the first edition of his book this way: "Maybe the Earth is being visited by interplanetary spaceships. Only time will tell." His second edition ends this way: "No responsible scientist will argue with the fact that other solar systems may be inhabited and that someday we may meet these people. But it hasn't happened yet, and until that day comes, we're stuck with our space-age myth, the UFO." The last sentence may not seem that dismissive, but some of Ruppelt's statements in the chapters leading up to it certainly are. In Chapter 18, he talks about a rumor he'd heard that the Air Force was involved in a conspiracy with the media to stamp out the UFO. He assures the reader that his Air Force buddies told him that it was business as usual and that there was no silence order. He defends the Air Force's lack of transparency, pointing out the manpower required to handle inquiries and that many of those came from saucer screwballs. He quotes an officer summing the situation up neatly, saying, "It isn't the UFOs that give us trouble, it's the people." Ruppelt also brings up the formation in 1957 of the National Investigation Committee on Aerial Phenomena. With retired high-ranking military personnel on its board of governors and Major Donald E. Kehoe, USMC retired, as its director, the organization was able to exert influence in high levels of government. Kehoe was bold enough to write a letter to the Air Force with the suggestion that NICAP's panel of special advisors be allowed to review the UFO files and evaluate the Air Force's conclusions. Ruppelt says, "This went over like a worm in a punch bowl." Ruppelt's biggest criticism of NICAP concerns their efforts in getting Congress involved when the Air Force chose to ignore them. As a result of those efforts, the United States Senate Committee on Government Operations started an inquiry in the UFOs in November 1957. Ruppelt himself was called to testify. He felt the whole thing was a waste of time in the midst of some real problems that were more deserving of attention. According to him, NICAP pounded the deepest thorn of any into the UFO side of the Air Force. In spite of this, he defends Kehoe against accusations that he was seeking publicity and profit through his efforts. Ruppelt felt he was simply convinced that UFOs are from outer space, and he's a dedicated man. In Chapter 19, Ruppelt parades the contactees past the reader. Not mentioned in the book is the fact that he actually attended George Van Tassel's 1955 Giant Rock spacecraft convention and interviewed George Adamski on tape. Adamski does almost all of the talking, while Ruppelt remains friendly and civil throughout the over 1.5-hour recording. In the book, Ruppelt brings up the money given to some of the contactees by people who could ill afford it, and the death of a woman in the Mojave Desert while awaiting contact herself. Chapter 20 begins with Ruppelt stating outright that he doesn't believe unidentified objects exist. He points out that the world had entered the age of satellites since he left the Air Force, and that no spaceships had been picked up by the sophisticated tracking systems that came along with it. Blue Book consultant J. Allen Hynek was then the director of an optical satellite tracking program called Project Moonwatch. He wrote to Ruppelt that they had no records of any unusual objects. Ruppelt then complains about the expression, experienced observer. He points out that everyone is an experienced observer when they see things they're used to observing. He criticizes radar as being temperamental and points out that operators can be subjective. He then presents a case where military pilots and personnel, along with 2 psychologists who are Blue Book consultants, all got excited after sighting what turned out to be 4 weather balloons tethered together. Insight into possible influences on Ruppelt can be gleaned from correspondence that was preserved from this time. 2 letters, one from a member of Ruppelt's Blue Book staff, Anderson Flues, and one from J. Allen Hynek, were in response to a request for their opinions on UFOs. Ruppelt references Hynek's letter in the book, and Flues agrees with Ruppelt that their investigation did not come up with any evidence that UFOs were extraterrestrial. A letter of particular interest is one Ruppelt wrote to Kehoe in response to an invitation to work at NICAP. Ruppelt was then working for Northrop. He declines the invitation and emphasizes that Northrop had nothing to do with his decision. He compliments a NICAP publication, its impressive board, and a statement from a board member, Major Dewey Fournette, USAF, retired. He asks about a rumor that a UFO article had been killed at the Air Force's request. Says he hopes to get to Washington soon and will call if he does. The best evidence that the shift in tone in Ruppelt's second edition was a reflection of his own beliefs is a letter from Major James F. Sunderman. Sunderman had received a memo from Air Force Intelligence saying that it was with the understanding that the Air Force would exercise close control on Ruppelt's manuscript that information was being provided for release to Ruppelt. Sunderman's letter to Ruppelt informs him that he is free to publish the book as written. While Ruppelt may not have been directly pressured by the Air Force, he confided to his wife that they had expressed displeasure with the book during their NICAP troubles. He served loyally, and it is not hard to imagine that, after experiencing the circus around the Contact D movement and the repeated waves of overly excited public reaction, he chose to emphasize his increased skepticism and help his brothers out. On the other hand, it's hard to imagine that, after some of the cases he investigated, he was able to dismiss the mystery entirely.
To find out more about our guest and all others, please visit our website at mysteriousradio.com. And I want to give special thanks to our co-creator and executive producer, Kim Kyle, who brought this show to you today. And working hard behind the scenes, our team of 4, I want to thank them as well. Follow us on social media and share the show with others that may like the subjects that we cover. I am your host, K-Town, and you're listening to Mysterious Radio.
Professionals spend nearly half the work week on written communication, so focus is important. With Grammarly as your AI writing partner, focus and quickly get through work with relevant real-time suggestions. And it works across 500,000 apps and websites, so you can sound more confident and persuasive wherever you write. 93% of professionals report that Grammarly helps them get more work done. Download Grammarly for free at Grammarly.com/podcast. That's Grammarly.com/podcast.
89% of business leaders say AI is a top priority, but with AI tools popping up everywhere, how do you separate the helpful from the hype? The right choice is crucial, which is why teams at 1/3 of Fortune 500 companies use Grammarly. With over 15 years of experience building responsible, secure
special guest tonight is Jason Stapleton, and he's here to discuss his book. Is called The Nomadic Wealth Formula, a blueprint for generating predictable and sustainable income from anywhere on Earth. And Jason, I want to thank you very much for joining me tonight on Mysterious Radio.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, so let's first talk about you and what it is you do and why you felt the need to write this particular.
Okay. Well, I actually am I'm a marketing and a branding guy by trade. Before that, I was a currency trader for about 10 years, and I built a reasonably successful education firm in the financial space that taught people how to trade currencies. And it wasn't my first foray into entrepreneurship, but it was my first successful one. And within a couple of years, we'd scaled that to a company that was doing several $1 million a year. And I kind of fell into an industry that I didn't realize it really existed, which is an industry of education and sharing of knowledge and expertise. I had assumed that happened in colleges, and anybody who bought stuff online, like training programs and stuff online, was an idiot. And I quickly realized that, man, I can go out pretty much to anybody in any field and find somebody there who's an expert in that field who teaches other people what they do. And I decided that I wanted to teach other people what I did in the trading space, and as I said, was reasonably successful at that. And it turned me on to a different way of understanding freedom. I'm very libertarian as an individual in the way I think. I believe fundamentally that we shouldn't hurt people and we shouldn't take their stuff. And I think that you ought to be allowed to do pretty much whatever you want as long as you don't hurt somebody else or prevent somebody else from doing what they want. And so these are very broad brushstroke sort of ideas, but I realized as that kind of that life philosophy began to form for me in my late 20s and early 30s, that most people don't have real freedom. And we spend a lot of time focusing on governments and policy decisions and the Constitution and protecting this document. And really, most people are living some form of indentured servitude, if not outright slavery, because they have no mobility in their income. They're making a very small wage because they don't have really any rare or specialized skills. And more importantly, that income isn't mobile, so they can't move around with it. If something happens and they need to move from one state to another, their income doesn't follow them. And God forbid you ever have to move from one country to another, certainly that income wouldn't follow. And I realized, I've got kind of the perfect business here. I make money by helping other people get what they want. I get to teach people things that interest me and that excite me. I make a lot of money doing it, and that money is 100% mobile because it's in a sense a digital business. And so I can go anywhere in the world at any time, and my business, not only does the business come with me, but all the revenue comes with me. And I said, I've been talking to people for a couple of years on my podcast about the coming recession, and I said, I don't know when it's going to come, but I know that we are going to have a recession, and if past recessions are any gauge, the one we're going to experience next is going to be worse than the one we experienced in 2008 and 2009. And so I said, we need to start preparing. I said, if things are good right now, you got a good job, you're making some money, it's time for you to start diversifying, start a little side hustle, something to get going. And I said, if you want a really easy way to make some extra income and to have a little something else going on the side, information businesses are fantastic businesses. I've been in the business for 15 years. And I said, I'm happy to help you develop one of those businesses if you would like. And not a lot of people took me up on it. We had some, we had a fair number of people, but a lot of people didn't heed that warning.
Okay, hold on one second. Tell people what information businesses is exactly. I know what you mean, but...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I guess I just assumed because it's the business I'm in. But information businesses are anybody who sells their knowledge and expertise to somebody else. So that you typically think these would be your traditional coaches or consultants. So it could be anything from a life coach who helps you make better decisions about your life choices, to someone who helps you lose weight, like someone who's giving you their fitness advice and their fitness regimen and diet and nutrition program, to a consultant who can help you maximize revenue for your company. Or in my case, what I tend to focus on is how do we build brand?
how do we use behavioral economics and what we know about heuristics or how we make decisions in order to make our product more appealing, make our brand stronger, so that we can sell more stuff at higher prices. That's what I help people do.
Okay, that's all.
And so,
Go ahead.
but essentially, any knowledge business is a business where you are selling what you know to somebody who needs that information.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so,
Go ahead. I'm
so-
sorry.
yeah, no, you're fine. And so then, essentially, that's where the book came from. After after COVID hit, and 40 million people instantly were unemployed, there was a massive demand for what I'd been talking about for the past 2 or 3 years. Now all of a sudden, now I have no money, and now I got to figure out how to earn a living, even though I had time in the past. And so I wrote the book as a way to kind of educate people on a different way to think about freedom, to think about money, and to think about their job or their business.
Okay, all right, very good. Now, this is so needed right now. Listen, let me tell you, I've been very lucky in that I can just relate to everything you're talking about right now, because I'm basically have made a living doing my podcast. It has taken me 5 years to actually make that happen, but I do what I want, when I want, and I make all the calls, and I've never had that ever in my life. And so I totally get what you're saying, and to me every day it feels like I'm never actually working. I'm doing what I love, which is a huge bonus, and I do wish that for everyone. So you talk about let's talk about mobility, because you did say that. So being tied to a building or a corporation, and someone telling you what to do and where to show up, is not a good feeling. So what has that meant for you? I'm assuming that's not something that you're used to, but what has that meant for you? Like you said, you can actually just go wherever you want and still make your living. So can you tell us from your perspective what that freedom has been like for you?
Well, I mean, for me, it just means having what I call total autonomy over